Hi there. What's the deal with procedural textures? When I first started using Blender, all the features were amazing. I made flaming monkey heads and smoke and explosions and obnoxious camera sweeps, and I tended to use procedural textures out of a lack of a desire to go find images to put on my meshes. I think that continued too long because I didn't know anything about unwrapping meshes in a workflow that felt good. Obviously, the concept is fascinating, but what are the actual advantages of using them? I'm glad I asked. Procedural textures use less memory and have infinite resolution. They don't require UV unwrapping, so there's that. I found that quote on Blender Stack Exchange, but I like to add the fact that you don't have to hunt down textures and worry about licensing also. If you choose to use an image, regardless of size, it'll eventually repeat. Nice bueno! Amazingly, procedural textures can be used in conjunction with images to negate this limitation even. More on that in a future video. Now, if you're using Blender as a gateway drug to other 3D software titles that are used in the CG industry, it's a great way to learn principles without committing with startup cash. Why shell out $1 bazillion to learn modeling or the concepts of making your own textures? With Blender, you can try it before you buy it. But beware, you might just fall in love with Blender and fail to move on to more respected titles, like I have. Thank you, Peter Kais, for your interest in my series. I hope it helps and inspires you. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is make sure that it is set to Cycles Render up here. And we don't have an object yet, so I'm going to add a cube. This way I can assign a material to it. And over here in the Properties section, I go to Material and click New. So you can actually change all your material settings right here in the Properties if you want, but I am wanting to show you nodes. So we will go to Shift F3, and that brings up the nodes. Mine is set to animation nodes, so I've got to move it to the object. And here you can see the settings that are over here are actually over here. Now if you don't remember Shift F3, you can always get to the node editor right here. So we were in 3D view before, and we'll go to node edit. So we have, I'm going to hit T, N, and T to get rid of those. So now we have a very simple material setup because that's what comes up as default. This BSDF stands for bidirectional scattering distribution function, and what that basically means is that the light bounces back to you, towards the source as well as towards the viewer and away from the source, so basically the color of the object. Now I like to use the preview pane here. You can change the size of this, and based on how powerful your computer is, it'll kind of give you a render view of what your changes are. So if I change this to say green, green, it changes it and it gives us what the material looks like. So this diffuse BS, just the diffuse node here, now I changed it to green. Change the roughness, it changes the randomness that the light scatters off of it, so it just makes it look rough and rugged. All of these here on this side are inputs, and all of this one here is an output. So what I can do is I can add something that has some other color. If I was going to do an image texture, or in this case, the first thing I would like to do is I'm going to add a color mix RGB. And I'll bring that color into, oh man, my thumb is malfunctioning, into there, to this here, so that the color is going into there, into the diffuse node. Really what I want to do is do a yellow, because yellow on black is a very distinct show of what the texture is actually doing. So I'll change this to black also. Yep. And now I've got kind of a mixture between the yellow and the black. So if I crank one of them up, it becomes all black. I crank the other direction, it becomes all yellow. So in order to show a texture, I would add a texture. So I'm going to add Shift A, texture, and I'm going to start with noise texture. And I'm going to put the color Now I'm going to put the factor into the factor here. I was going to show you something else, but I'm not going to do that quite yet. Anyway, so this texture node here is generating what I see over here. If I wanted more elements in it, I raise the scale to higher. So I'm going to double it, and that actually makes it smaller. So there's more elements. It's like iterations of the texture itself. So the higher the number, the smaller the texture looks. But, you know, so the lower the number, you can barely see anything because it's so spread over. There's only one on that sphere. So if I go 2, you see it's starting to appear. So the higher I go up, it gives you more elements. Detail increases the detail level of the element, and you can only go as high as the scale level that you have there. So if I hit 10, you can see it changed, but it didn't look like it changed a lot. Anyway, so if I go up to 20, it won't change at all. Nothing will change. You can change the distortion, which will add some swirliness and that kind of thing to it. 2. See, now we're getting kind of a burl wood design, or maybe mahogany type of look. And go up a little higher. So you can see what the changes. Once you have all of this set up with what I did here, you can change all of this in a way that, you know, you can test everything. And that's the main thing, is testing everything till you get the look that you want. So I want, say, 20 here, and that gives me a bunch of bumps. And I can take that factor and plug that right into displacement, and it makes it look all bumpy based on what the noise texture was doing. So right now I'm sending it to decide how much yellow and how much black is based on the factor, and then also decide how much displacement it has. So it's actual bumpiness. Now, if I take the color off of here, if I take the factor off the color here, it goes to that that dark yellow that it was before. Well, it's because it's way down here. At 50%, it's that dark yellow. But if I go up here, back to where it was just then, it's that bright yellow, but you still have the bumpiness. So I can take that displacement off of the factor, and it's all smooth again. Or put it back over the factor on the color on the factor. This color here, I don't actually use this on the noise texture too much, because the only thing it would be useful for is making like a nebulous planet atmosphere or something like that, because it kind of just looks strange. Not useful in my opinion. But the last thing I wanted to show on this video, in this portion, is what I did in the book, where I set up the 3 nodes so that I didn't have to look at these 3 nodes, because in the book I could only fit so much stuff in the picture that before everything in the picture was too small. So what I do is I hit B to border select or box select all of this stuff, and hit Control G to group it. Now I'm looking at a group, and I'm actually in the edit view of the group. So if I hit tab, it brings me out of it, and I've got just this one node now. And this node represents those 3 nodes inside. So I enter tab one more time, and because I want to be able to change some nodes, like bring this color over into here, and there's nothing to plug into. So if I go into the edit mode here, I can drag the factor over to this right there, and the color over to this, and the color over to this. Then when I hit tab, now I've got inputs for my node group. And that node group is, of course, the RGB mix, the diffuse node, and the material output, but it doesn't take up as much room as it did. So I can put my factor right into factor here, and I get the same effect that I was getting before. And that's where I'm going to end this video. For now, I'm going to go further into the noise texture, as I did in the book, in the next video. Thank you. Please direct your comments and questions to the comments section below. Let me know how I'm doing.